Find another table to eat at. This space is for blood family, not for kids who were adopted. My sister Victoria's voice echoed through the elegant dining room of Belmont's, a high-end Seattle eatery. Laughter erupted from the surrounding guests, my brother Kenneth, my parents, and Victoria's husband, all reacting as if it were the funniest joke they had heard. I stood there, handbag in hand, my face burning with shame as other diners turned their heads to watch. The sparkling chandeliers above cast a soft light on the white tablecloths and crystal glasses. Yet, I felt frozen on the inside. My name is Rachel, and I am 27 years of age. I have been with this family for 22 years, since they brought me home at 5 years old. 22 years of constant reminders that I was an outsider, that I was different from them, that I was inferior to them. The only person who ever made me feel valued was Grandma Dorothy, my adoptive mother's mother, who sat at the end of the table with an unusual expression on her face. "Victoria, that is enough," I said softly, attempting to maintain some measure of self-respect. "Oh, stop being so touchy," my mother Patricia interrupted, waving dismissively with her perfectly groomed nails. "We are just teasing you. You know how Victoria is?" I knew precisely how Victoria was. At 32, she had perfected the skill of putting me down while keeping up the facade of family harmony. During our younger years, she received the best bedroom, the latest clothes, and the expensive college education. I got used items and paid for my own community college tuition. She was applauded for average accomplishments, while I was condemned for succeeding. "Sit down, Rachel," my father, Gregory, commanded. "You are making a scene," I complied, swallowing the objection that began to rise in my throat. This celebratory dinner was supposed to honor Victoria's newest business transaction, a real estate acquisition that my parents had financially backed. They always supported Victoria. When I had requested a financial loan 3 years ago to launch my graphic design company, they had ridiculed me and told me to be practical. The evening continued with conversations flowing around me as if I were transparent. Victoria bragged about her new Mercedes-Benz. Kenneth discussed his recent promotion at the bank. My parents beamed with satisfaction, asking questions and offering compliments. When I attempted to mention the significant client I had recently secured a contract valued at $50,000, my mother quickly interrupted me. "That is lovely, dear Kenneth. Tell us more about your financial reward." By the time the final course arrived, I had mentally withdrawn, wrapped in a familiar sense of detachment. This was my typical role in the family. The unwelcome outsider, the recipient of their charity, the person they maintained around to enhance their own sense of virtue. Then the server arrived with the bill. My stomach sank as he set the leather folder directly in front of me. I stared at it, confused. "What is this?" I questioned. Victoria's laugh was sharp and loud. "Oh, did we forget to mention that you are paying the bill tonight? Consider it as your mandatory contribution to the family, since you are constantly taking and never contributing back." "Taking?" The word emerged choked. "I have never requested anything from you. The roof over your head as a child. The meals, the clothing." Patricia enumerated the items on her fingers. "We provided you everything, Rachel. The minimum you can do is purchase us dinner." My hands trembled as I opened the folder. The amount made my vision swim. $3,270. They had selected the most costly wines, numerous appetizers, premium steaks, and lobster tails. Kenneth had somehow requested 3 desserts. "I cannot afford this," I said quietly. "Of course you can," Victoria said in a falsely sweet tone. "You just mentioned your big client. $50,000, wasn't it? This is nothing to you now." The reality was that the $50,000 was distributed across 6 months of work, and most was already designated for business expenses, rent payments, and repaying the student loans that my family had refused to help with. This single meal would deplete my savings. But I couldn't risk creating another scene, nor could I provide them more ammunition to label me ungrateful, difficult, or overly dramatic. With trembling hands, I retrieved my credit card and positioned it in the folder. The server quickly took it away, and I forced myself to smile, to sip my water, to behave as if this wasn't completely destroying me. Victoria was already talking about their upcoming trip to Tuscany. My parents planned to accompany them, Nobody inquired if I wanted to join them. They never did. When the server returned with my card and the receipt, I signed with fingers that felt wooden. $3,270 for the dubious privilege of being publicly humiliated by people who were meant to love me. Well, that was delightful, Patricia said, gently touching her lips with a napkin. Same time next month. They fully expected this would become a regular occurrence. I parted my lips to object, to finally declare that I had endured enough, when another voice interrupted the noise. Just a moment, please. Everyone instantly fell silent. Grandma Dorothy, who had remained quiet during the entire meal, was now standing at her end of the table. At 78 years old, she retained a powerful presence, her silver hair perfectly styled, her posture rigidly upright. Something in her expression caused my chest to constrict. The entire restaurant seemed to pause. Grandma Dorothy had always been unlike the rest of the family. While my parents and siblings regarded me as a burdensome obligation, she was the one who always attended my school events, who remembered my birthday, and who inquired about my aspirations. She was also the wealthiest person I knew, a self-made billionaire who had created a pharmaceutical empire from nothing. Recently, however, she had been more reserved, simply observing. I had noticed her studying family gatherings with an intensity that made me curious about her thoughts. "Mother, what is it?" Patricia asked, a hint of annoyance in her voice. "We were just preparing to leave. Sit down, everyone." Grandma Dorothy's voice had an authority that made even my father straighten in his chair. "I have something I need to say, and you will all listen to me." Victoria rolled her eyes but remained seated. Kenneth glanced at his phone under the table. My parents exchanged puzzled looks. Grandma Dorothy's steady gaze traveled over each of them before settling on me. Something appeared in her eyes, perhaps sadness, or disappointment toward everyone else. "I have been observing this family for many years," she began, her voice composed but cold. "Observing how you treat Rachel, how you have always treated her." "Mother, really?" Patricia protested. "This is not the appropriate time. Be silent." The command was so severe that my mother actually obeyed. "I am 78 years old, and I have spent the last several months contemplating my final legacy, and where my wealth should go after my death." The table became entirely quiet. My father's utensil clinked against his plate as he placed it down. Victoria's smug expression wavered. "We are all aware of the established arrangement," Grandma Dorothy continued. "The majority of my estate is allocated for Patricia, then to be distributed among the grandchildren. That is the provision in the current legal will." I observed Victoria's face illuminate with greed. She had been counting on that future inheritance for years, making extravagant purchases and planning investments based on money she hadn't yet obtained. "But I have instructed my attorney to draft a revised will." Grandma Dorothy removed a large envelope from her purse. "It was formally signed and notarized yesterday." The silence felt oppressive. "You cannot be serious," Kenneth said. "You are changing your will because of what? A silly, minor joke?" "A joke?" Grandma Dorothy's laugh sounded bitter. "I have observed every one of you mock and belittle Rachel for more than 20 years. I have observed you intentionally exclude her, embarrass her, and treat her as worthless. And tonight you compelled her to pay for your extravagant meal while you found it amusing. We were just having fun." Victoria attempted to explain, but her voice trembled slightly. "Fun?" Grandma Dorothy repeated the word as if it were repulsive. "You think intentional cruelty is fun? You think that making someone feel worthless is entertaining?" My heart was pounding so loudly that I thought everyone could hear it. Grandma Dorothy slowly walked around the table until she stood directly next to me. Her hand rested gently on my shoulder. "Rachel is the only person in this family who has demonstrated true integrity," she announced. "She has labored hard for everything she has. She constructed a business from nothing without any help from any of you. She is a kind, talented, and very resilient person, despite your best efforts to crush her spirit." "Mother, you are being overly dramatic," Gregory said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Grandma Dorothy raised her eyebrows. "Patricia, when was the last time you inquired about Rachel's life?" Truly inquired and listened to her answer. My mother's mouth opened and then closed without producing a sound. "Kenneth," Have you ever once congratulated your sister on her professional achievements? Have you ever acknowledged her success? My brother kept staring at his plate. Victoria, have you spent even one day treating Rachel as a genuine family member instead of a servant? My sister's face turned bright red with anger and embarrassment. Grandma Dorothy looked at each of them, her profound disappointment evident. You have all failed spectacularly. You accepted a young girl who had lost everything, and instead of providing love and support, you have spent 22 years making her pay for the basic kindness you clearly never offered. The weight of her words settled over the table like a thick, suffocating blanket. Other patrons had stopped pretending they weren't listening. Servers paused in the background, sensing the unfolding drama. Therefore, this is what will happen, Grandma Dorothy said, her voice gaining firm strength. My entire estate, every dollar, every asset, every investment is being transferred to Rachel. The resulting explosion was immediate. What? What did you say? Victoria screamed, immediately jumping to her feet. You absolutely cannot do that. That is completely unfair. Kenneth slammed his hand on the table surface. Mother, please reconsider what you are saying, Patricia begged. You are talking about billions of dollars. Rachel is not even truly part of this family. Stop. Grandma Dorothy's command silenced them again. Rachel is more family than any of you have ever been. She has earned this designation, not through biology, but through her character, through being a better person than all of you combined. I remained frozen, completely unable to comprehend what was happening. Billions of dollars, Grandma Dorothy's entire fortune. It seemed impossible, surreal, too enormous to grasp. You are being manipulated, Gregory said desperately. Rachel must have orchestrated some scheme. Rachel has done nothing except survive your ongoing emotional abuse. Grandma Dorothy cut him off forcefully. And that abusive period ends tonight. She retrieved her phone and made a call. Thomas, it is Dorothy. Yes, file the new will immediately. Ensure every part of it is legally solid and prepare all the required trust documents in Rachel S. name. My family members' faces displayed emotions ranging from pure shock to complete fury and disbelief. Victoria looked as if she might faint. Kenneth's face had turned deep purple. My parents seemed to age 10 years in seconds. This is not over, Victoria hissed at me. We will challenge this in court. We will fight you legally. Try it, Grandma Dorothy responded calmly. I have personally ensured that every detail is completely legal, and my mental capacity is confirmed by a medical evaluation done just this morning. She had planned every detail of this moment. The explosive reaction that followed was unlike anything I had witnessed. Victoria violently lunged across the table, her face contorted with rage. Kenneth quickly grabbed her arm, but his own anger was barely controlled. My parents remained in shocked silence, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. You manipulative, lying wretch, Victoria snarled at me. You planned this whole thing. You have been pretending to be the victim the entire time. Enough! Grandma Dorothy stepped between us. Rachel has done nothing wrong. She was completely unaware of this until this very moment. It was the absolute truth. I was still reeling, my mind struggling to comprehend the scale of what had just occurred. Billions of dollars. Grandma Dorothy's entire estate, everything she had built over her long life. Why are you doing this? Patricia's voice broke, tears streaming down her face. I am your own daughter, your own blood, and you should feel shame about the way you have behaved, Grandma Dorothy replied, her voice softening slightly but still firm. I gave you every advantage in life, Patricia, education, opportunities, and love. And you took all of that and learned nothing about compassion or kindness. Instead, you passed your cruelty down to your own children. Gregory tried a different approach. Let us be reasonable. We can work through this. Maybe we could split the estate. There is nothing to work through, Grandma Dorothy stated firmly. The decision has been made. My legal team has ensured everything is carefully prepared. The trust has been officially established. Rachel will inherit everything when I die, with immediate access to certain accounts starting tomorrow. Tomorrow? The word hung in the air. This was not just a distant promise about the future. This was a real, immediate, and actively happening reality. Kenneth leaned forward, his voice low and threatening. You are making a huge mistake. Rachel has no ability to handle that kind of wealth. She will waste it all within a year. Rachel built a successful business starting with nothing, Grandma Dorothy interrupted. She has better financial responsibility at age 27 than any of you have ever shown. She had to develop it because you always refused to help her. I finally found my voice, though it sounded shaky. Grandma, I still don't understand. Why are you doing this now? She turned toward me and her expression softened. Because I have been watching you suffer for long enough, my sweet child. I am dying. The room seemed to tilt. What did you say? The word was barely audible. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I probably have 6 months, maybe less, she said with unusual calm, but I could sense the distress beneath her composed exterior. I received this diagnosis 3 months ago, and I have spent that whole time organizing my affairs, making sure that my legacy goes to someone who truly deserves it. Tears immediately filled my vision. Grandma Dorothy was dying. The only person who had ever truly loved me was going to leave. Oh, please don't cry, Rachel. She pulled me into a tight hug, and I smelled her familiar scent, a comforting mix of lilac and vanilla. This is not a time for sadness. This is justice. Around us, the restaurant had become completely quiet. Even the routine sounds from the kitchen had stopped. Everyone present was witnessing this family's dramatic breakdown in real time. You cannot be serious about this, Patricia tried again, desperation making her voice shrill. Mother, please think about your grandchildren. Think about the family legacy. I am thinking about the family legacy, Grandma Dorothy countered. That is exactly why I am doing this. The family legacy should represent compassion, hard work, and integrity. Rachel represents all of those values. The rest of you mainly represent entitlement, cruelty, and greed. Victoria's hands were shaking. We will take legal action. We will legally prove that you are not of sound mind. I wish you luck with that, Grandma Dorothy said, her smile sharp and knowing. I have comprehensive medical evaluations, psychological assessments, and testimony from dozens of independent witnesses about your treatment of Rachel over the years. My lawyer has been carefully documenting everything for many months. She had carefully planned this whole outcome, acting with careful method, protecting me even as her own life was drastically shortened. I desperately want to leave and go home, I whispered. Naturally, Grandma Dorothy kept her protective arm around me. Thomas is waiting outside with the car. He will take both of us to my residence. We have a lot of important information to discuss. As we turned to leave, Kenneth physically blocked our way. This arrangement is deeply unfair. She is not one of us. Move immediately. Grandma Dorothy's voice was like ice. Or I will tell security to physically remove you. He reluctantly stepped aside, but the intense hatred in his eyes caused me to flinch. We walked through the restaurant in complete silence, every eye following our movement. The cool Seattle night air hit my face as we came outside, and I breathed it in deeply, trying to steady myself emotionally. A sleek, black luxury car was parked at the curb. Thomas, Grandma Dorothy's devoted driver of 3 decades, opened the door with a knowing, sympathetic smile. Miss Rachel, welcome. Thomas knows about everything, Grandma Dorothy told me as we settled into the back seat. He has been helping me carefully plan this for many weeks. The car pulled away from the restaurant, leaving my former family standing on the sidewalk in shock. Through the back window, I could see Victoria screaming something, her face twisted with rage. Kenneth was already on his phone, presumably calling a lawyer. My parents stood together, looking lost and shattered. I felt that I should have been feeling some emotion, maybe guilt, or maybe fear. But all I truly felt was a tired, numb exhaustion mixed with a strange new sense of freedom. Are you truly dying? I asked Grandma Dorothy, my voice barely audible. Yes, I am. She gently took my hand. Her skin was very thin, almost like tissue paper, but her grip had surprising strength. But I have no fear. I have lived a long, full life, Rachel. I built an empire, raised a family, and left my mark. Now I have the chance to make sure that everything I dedicated my life to goes to someone truly worthy. I do not know if I can handle this, I admitted openly. I have no knowledge of how to be wealthy. I do not know how to run your businesses. You will learn the required skills, she stated confidently. You are intelligent, very hardworking, and you have good intuition, and you will have an excellent management team to provide guidance. I have made sure of that. The city's lights blurred outside the window as we were driven toward her large estate in Madison Park. What happens next? Next? Grandma Dorothy squeezed my hand firmly. Now, we start the process of preparing you for your completely new life, and we will take steps to make sure that your family can never hurt you again. The next morning, I woke up inside one of Grandma Dorothy's luxurious guest bedrooms. For a brief moment, I was confused by the silk sheets and the wide view of Lake Washington through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Then, the memories rapidly came back. The restaurant scene, the huge bill, the shocking announcement, everything. My phone had been vibrating since I had turned it back on. 43 missed calls from Victoria, 27 from my mother, and 16 from Kenneth. Dozens of text messages ranged from desperate pleas to direct threats. I scrolled through them with a strange, emotional detachment. You are being selfish. Think about the family, Patricia. I will completely ruin you in court. You will not see a single penny. Victoria, we need to talk. This whole mess can still be fixed. Gregory, Grandma is clearly not thinking rationally. Help us get her mentally evaluated. Kenneth, I deliberately set the phone down and walked toward the large window. Grandma Dorothy's estate took up 3 acres of premium Seattle real estate. The morning sunlight reflected brightly off the lake surface, sailboats already visible on the water. This property was mine now, or it would be soon. A soft tapping sound interrupted my thoughts. Miss Rachel, breakfast is ready and Miss Dorothy would like to see you in the study. I found Grandma Dorothy sitting behind a huge, dark mahogany desk, looking surprisingly energetic despite the news about her declining health the day before. Thomas stood quietly nearby, and a distinguished-looking man in an expensive tailored suit sat facing her. Rachel, this is Walter, who is my personal attorney, Grandma Dorothy introduced. We need to review a number of important matters. Walter immediately stood up, shaking my hand with a firm, professional grip. Miss Rachel, it is a pleasure. Your grandmother has always spoken of you in the highest regard. I sat down, still feeling completely wrapped in an unbelievable dream state. Walter opened a leather portfolio and began to carefully outline the complexities of the trust, the various businesses, and the investments. Figures that seemed impossible swam dizzyingly before my eyes. $3 billion in readily available liquid assets, $5 billion invested in property, and other ventures, major stakes in pharmaceutical companies, real estate development projects, and many technology startups. The immediate access accounts become active today, Walter explained precisely. $5 million designated for your personal use while the overall trust documents are finalized. Your grandmother wanted to make sure you had immediate resources. $5 million for instant personal use. I felt a wave of dizziness. There is more you need to know, Grandma Dorothy stated, her eyes sharp and focused. Your family will try to legally challenge this will. They will claim undue influence, reduced mental capacity, almost anything they can think of. We must be completely prepared for that. What actions can they realistically take? I asked. Walter leaned slightly forward. Legally speaking, very little. Miss Dorothy has solid documentation confirming her sound mental state, including evaluations from 3 separate independent medical professionals. The will is virtually unbreakable. However, they can significantly complicate the process, drag it out endlessly in court, and create negative public relations. Let them try, Grandma Dorothy stated firmly. I have personally been documenting their terrible treatment of Rachel for several years. Every cruel remark, every calculated exclusion, every incident of financial abuse. If they truly want a court battle, I will bury them under overwhelming evidence. My phone vibrated again. Victoria. I silenced it immediately. There is one more thing you absolutely must know, Grandma Dorothy continued, and something in her tone caused me to tense up. Your adoption situation was not exactly what you have always believed it to be. The whole room seemed to suddenly pitch. What exactly do you mean? She smoothly pulled a large folder from her desk drawer, sliding it across the surface toward me. When Patricia and Gregory officially adopted you, they received a significant sum of money. Specifically, $750,000. It was funds explicitly meant to cover your full care, your education, and everything you would need while growing up. I stared at the documents in the folder bank statements, official transfer records. They received money just for adopting me? It was money from a legal trust established by your biological parents, Grandma Dorothy confirmed. They tragically died in a car accident when you were 5 years old. They had set up that trust specifically to guarantee your care. Patricia and Gregory were approved as your adoptive parents and were given complete access to those resources. My hands trembled as I quickly flipped through the papers. $750,000, and yet I had always worn second-hand clothing. Was made to attend community college on student loans, and was constantly told that the family lacked the money to help me. They spent every cent of it, I whispered, seeing the detailed account statements. Expensive vacations, luxury cars, Victoria's private school tuition, Kenneth's college savings fund. They spent my money on everyone except for me. Yes, Grandma Dorothy confirmed quietly. I only discovered this devastating truth myself 2 years ago. I have been carefully investigating the matter ever since then, gathering all the required proof. That is theft, Rachel. They stole from a vulnerable child. The sense of betrayal cut me far deeper than any earlier cruelty. It went beyond simple cruelty or favoritism. They had profited directly from my tragedy, taken resources specifically set aside for my welfare, and used it to spoil their biological children while constantly treating me as a financial burden. Why did you not tell me this sooner? I questioned. Because I needed to be absolutely certain. I required all the documentation to be perfectly organized and legally verifiable. And because she paused briefly, looking suddenly older and more fragile, because I knew that the moment you became aware of the truth, there would be no possibility of turning back. Your strained relationship with them, toxic as it was, would reach a complete, final conclusion. She was absolutely right. Any tiny part of me that had held hope for a future reconciliation, that had briefly wondered if perhaps I was just too sensitive or too ungrateful, died in that instant. They had not simply been cruel people. They were actual criminals. What should I do now? I felt overwhelmed and completely lost. You will let me handle it, Grandma Dorothy took control. Walter has already filed a civil lawsuit against Patricia and Gregory for the unlawful misappropriation of trust funds. Including interest over 22 years, they currently owe you an approximate total of $2.3 million. My cell phone immediately erupted with incoming calls again. This time, it was my father, Gregory. Answer the call, Grandma Dorothy instructed. Put it on speakerphone. Let us hear exactly what he has to say. With hands that were still shaking, I accepted the incoming call. Rachel, Gregory's voice was filled with desperation. Rachel, please, we absolutely must talk. Your grandmother is not thinking clearly. She seems completely clear-headed to me, I stated, my voice sounding more steady than my internal state felt. This whole situation is completely insane. You cannot possibly believe that you deserve her entire fortune. You have lived with us for 22 years and now, suddenly, you turn hostile the very moment that money becomes a factor. The moment money is involved, you mean? I repeated his phrase. Are you perhaps referring to the $750,000 in funds that you illegally took for adopting me? The money that you spent on everyone except for me. A heavy silence followed immediately. I have no knowledge of what lies she has been feeding you. Official bank records are reliable, Dad. The word tasted bitter. Walter has all the required documentation. You stole from me. Both of you were involved. Patricia's voice then came through the phone line, sharp and shrill with growing panic. That money was specifically meant for the expense of raising you, for providing you with housing, and for feeding you. You provided me with used, second-hand clothes and made me completely finance my own community college education. I shot back. Meanwhile, Victoria got designer clothes and a completely funded placement at a private university. Kenneth got a brand new car at age 16. I got nothing of value. You are being ungrateful, Gregory attempted. We provided you with a permanent home. You provided me with a prison, I declared firmly. The words felt powerful and liberating. You deliberately made me feel completely worthless every day, and you did that while spending the money that was rightfully meant for my care. We will aggressively fight this legal action, Patricia threatened. We will drag you into court proceedings. Please go ahead and do so, Grandma Dorothy quickly interjected. I would find great pleasure in watching you attempt to explain those financial records to a judge. Explain how you illegally took money meant for a grieving 5-year-old child and spent it on luxurious international vacations. The call abruptly ended. They had suddenly hung up, probably to immediately contact their own lawyers. I felt Walter's calming hand placed on my shoulder. Miss Rachel, I recognize this whole situation is deeply overwhelming. But you must completely understand this important fact. You have all the advantages here. They have no legitimate legal basis to stand on. They will still try regardless, I asserted. Of course, they will make the attempt, Grandma Dorothy conceded. But they will lose the fight. And when that happens, you will never be required to see them again. 3 days later, the whole story somehow leaked to the media, and I strongly suspected Victoria was the source. The specific details about Grandma Dorothy's will alteration had been released to the press. Billionaire disinherits biological family for adopted granddaughter, the sensational headline screamed. My phone would not stop ringing with persistent reporters demanding official statements. I had temporarily moved into Grandma Dorothy's large estate, unable to bear living in my apartment whose address my family knew. Thomas had carefully retrieved my belongings, and I was living in a strange, unsettling bubble of luxurious comfort mixed with overwhelming chaos. The public response was sharply divided. Some people publicly praised Grandma Dorothy for justly rewarding character over mere biology. Others denounced me as a manipulative gold digger who had seduced an elderly woman out of her fortune. The comment sections online were brutally cruel. She must have been secretly sleeping with the old woman's lawyer or something equally corrupt. Gold digger alert. This girl knew exactly what she was trying to accomplish. Good for Dorothy. Family is defined by how you treat others, not blood. That adopted girl is guaranteed to waste billions within 1 year. Just wait and see. I tried to ignore the comments, but the negative words deeply burrowed under my skin. Was my acceptance of this gift wrong? Should I have completely refused Grandma Dorothy's generous gift? Stop reading those negative comments immediately, Grandma Dorothy instructed, finding me hunched over my laptop computer in the library. She looked visibly weaker than she had just days earlier, the aggressive cancer clearly advancing rapidly. People will always have opinions. Let them talk fruitlessly. They are calling me terrible things, I confessed. They hurled terrible names at me when I built my initial company, she responded, settling into the large chair next to me. They said I was too aggressive, too masculine, too driven. They believed a woman could never succeed in the pharmaceutical industry. I proved them all wrong. She gently took my hand. Her grip was noticeably weaker now. You will also prove them wrong, Rachel. Not by defending yourself, but simply by continuing to be exactly the person you are, kind, hardworking, and principled. That same afternoon, Walter arrived bringing urgent news. Patricia and Gregory have officially filed legal papers to contest the will. They are claiming reduced mental capacity and undue influence. Let me see the documents, Grandma Dorothy commanded. Walter handed over the legal paperwork. I read the documents over her shoulder, my anger steadily growing with every printed word. They boldly claimed that I had isolated Grandma Dorothy from her immediate family, that I had manipulated a sick, elderly woman, and that I had deliberately exploited her declining mental state. This is completely ridiculous, I declared. I was completely unaware of her cancer diagnosis until that very evening. We have strong evidence proving the opposite of their claims, Walter reassured me, including consistent testimony from medical staff, trusted friends, and many business associates. They are desperate, grasping for anything to hold on to, but something in Walter's hesitant expression made me anxious. What is it? What important information are you keeping from me?
He exchanged a quick, meaningful look with Grandma Dorothy.
Victoria has recently hired a private investigator. They are currently looking deeply into your personal history, searching for any scrap of information they might use against you. My stomach immediately dropped. There is nothing negative to discover. We are aware of that fact, Grandma Dorothy stated. But they will try to invent something. They will twist harmless situations out of context. Just as if on cue, my cell phone rang. An unfamiliar number appeared on the display. Against my better judgment, I answered, Rachel. It is wonderful to finally reach you. The voice was completely unfamiliar, overly sweet and syrupy. I am Jennifer Cole from Seattle Scene magazine. I would love to have a conversation about your current relationship with Dorothy. No comment will be given, I stated, moving quickly to end the call. Wait, I just have a couple of questions about some allegations. What allegations are you talking about? About your business enterprise. There are specific questions circulating about the original source of your startup capital. Some people are suggesting that Dorothy secretly funded it years ago, implying that you have been carefully planning this takeover for a long duration. My blood immediately ran cold. That assertion is completely untrue. I built my business exclusively using my own earned capital. Can you immediately provide definitive proof of that claim? Do you have the required supporting documentation? I abruptly hung up the call, my hands shaking. They are trying to construct a specific narrative, Walter stated grimly. That you have been carefully grooming Dorothy for several years. That everything you have achieved was actually built with her financial resources. But it truly was not her money. I have the official loan documents, all the important business records. We know that fact. Grandma Dorothy soothed me gently. And we will definitely prove the truth, but Rachel, you must brace yourself fully. This situation is going to escalate and become far worse before it shows any signs of improvement. She was absolutely correct in her prediction. By that evening, social media platforms were flooded with aggressive theories. Anonymous accounts, almost certainly operated by my family members, were rapidly spreading malicious rumors that I had failed out of community college. I had graduated with high honors, that my business was actively failing. It was presently thriving. That I had engaged in multiple affairs with wealthy older men I had barely dated in years. The single cruelest rumor claimed that I had somehow orchestrated my birth parents' untimely death to gain access to their trust fund. I was only 5 years old when they died, but facts held no significance for internet trolls. I closed my laptop, feeling physically ill. Miss Rachel, Thomas appeared suddenly at the library entrance. There are news reporters gathering at the front gate. Quite a large number of them. I walked quickly to the window that overlooked the estate's front section. News vans were parked lining the street. Cameras were pointed directly at the large house. My previously private life was now an unwanted public spectacle. This laughing when I was deliberately not invited to her elaborate birthday party. Kenneth violently pushing me into the swimming pool during a family gathering while everyone present laughed loudly. Every specific instance of calculated exclusion, every piece of casual cruelty, all building toward this present moment. Around 2 a.m, my phone buzzed with an incoming text message from an unknown number. You're going to deeply regret this whole action. We will completely destroy you. V. Victoria was threatening me using a disposable burner phone. I immediately took a screenshot of the message and quickly forwarded it to Walter. Evidence. Grandma Dorothy had taught me well. The following morning brought a new, unwelcome development. Kenneth appeared unexpectedly at the estate, having somehow successfully talked his way past the security team. I encountered him in the large foyer, where he was actively arguing loudly with Thomas. I absolutely need to see Rachel immediately, he was insisting. Please, this is critically important. It is acceptable, Thomas, I said, even though my heart was rapidly racing. I will speak with him personally. Kenneth looked genuinely terrible. Unshaven, his clothing wrinkled, dark, prominent circles under both eyes. He looked nothing like the highly polished banker I had grown up alongside. Rachel, please, he implored. We need to fix this terrible situation. The whole family is completely falling apart. The family completely fell apart a very long time ago, I retorted. You are merely noticing that fact now because significant money is directly involved. That is deeply unfair. I acknowledge that we were not always. I know that we could have been considerably better to you, but this, he broadly gestured around the vast estate, cutting us out entirely. That is taking things far too far. Too extreme? My voice suddenly rose despite my conscious attempt to remain calm. Kenneth, you intentionally pushed me into a pool when I was 12, and I nearly drowned completely because nobody had bothered to teach me how to swim. Swimming lessons were exclusively reserved for actual family. Victoria openly told everyone at my school that I was adopted because my biological parents specifically did not want me. Mom forgot my actual birthday celebration 3 consecutive years in a row. Dad explicitly told me I should be grateful for receiving mere scraps. And all of you collectively spent $750,000 that was specifically intended for my welfare while I was forced to work 3 simultaneous jobs just to fully pay for community college tuition. Kenneth's face went completely white. I was completely unaware of that specific trust fund money. I solemnly swear I knew nothing. You were unaware because you never once bothered to ask, I countered. Not a single one of you ever truly asked about me, about the direction of my life, about whether I was basically okay. The words poured forth without restraint, years of accumulated pain finally finding voice. You claim you want to repair the family? There is nothing left that requires fixing. It was basically broken from its beginning. Rachel, please leave my house immediately. My voice was now completely steady, totally cold. Get out of this house and make sure you do not ever return. You are committing a terrible mistake, Kenneth asserted, but there was zero conviction left in his tone. When Grandma passes away, you will be left completely alone with no one. I was already completely alone, I replied pointedly. At the very least, now I will have the important resources to construct an authentic, independent life. Thomas quietly escorted Kenneth out the door. Through the window glass, I watched my brother walk defeatedly to his car, his shoulders clearly slumped. For a brief instant, just a moment, I experienced a faint twinge of something unclear, not quite guilt, but a sorrowful acknowledgement of the potential life that could have been achieved had they made deeply different choices. That same afternoon, Walter urgently called an emergency meeting. His expression was clearly grave. Victoria's devoted legal team has managed to locate something significant, he revealed. Or rather, they are claiming to have located something. They are officially alleging that you personally forged specific documents related to your business, specifically targeting your client contracts. They are actively attempting to portray you as basically dishonest, someone fully capable of manipulating Dorothy. That is completely insane, I stated immediately. All of my contracts are totally legitimate. We are fully aware of that fact. But they are filing a formal motion seeking to officially delay the will proceedings pending a comprehensive investigation. It is clearly a stalling tactic, but it does unfortunately hold the potential to succeed. Grandma Dorothy's hand slammed forcefully onto the desk surface, startling both Walter and me. Despite her physical weakness, the intense anger clearly lent her renewed strength. Absolutely not under any circumstances. Walter, immediately file an emergency motion to successfully expedite the process. I demand this whole matter be legally resolved before. She intentionally left the grim conclusion of her sentence unsaid. Dorothy, you require immediate rest, Walter began pleadingly. I will achieve rest only when this objective is accomplished, she snapped back fiercely. My granddaughter is currently being viciously attacked by opportunistic vultures masquerading deceptively as family. We end this legal action immediately. Walter nodded his agreement and quickly pulled out his phone, stepping away slightly to initiate immediate calls. Grandma Dorothy turned directly toward me, her eyes intensely fierce despite the deep exhaustion clearly evident in her face. Rachel, there is a critical task I require you to undertake for me. Anything at all, I replied instantly. I am scheduling a full press conference for tomorrow afternoon. I intend to reveal the complete truth. All of it, the criminally stolen money, the prolonged emotional abuse, everything. But I urgently need you to be present there alongside me. The world needs to visually see you and hear the factual story directly from your own voice. Terror immediately gripped me tightly. I cannot possibly do that. I will certainly say something inappropriate. You will be completely perfect, she insisted firmly. Because your only responsibility will be to speak the truth. That is the only requirement necessary. That night I barely slept again. I repeatedly rehearsed various potential statements, then discarded them completely. How is it possible to adequately summarize 22 years of continuous, agonizing pain in only a few short minutes? How do you effectively make complete strangers to fully understand the depth of the situation? The press conference was formally scheduled for 2 in the afternoon the next day at Grandma Dorothy's downtown corporate office. When Thomas carefully drove us to the location, the sheer volume of media presence was overwhelming. Cameras were positioned everywhere, reporters aggressively shouting numerous questions. A large crowd of curious onlookers documenting the whole scene on their phones. Walter had carefully prepared a detailed official statement. But when I looked closely at Grandma Dorothy truly focused upon her, I recognized the immense toll this effort was taking on her. She was actively dying, utilizing her final reserves of physical strength to vigorously fight this battle on my behalf. The designated conference room was densely packed, cameras actively rolling, lights intensely bright, the air thick with clear anticipation. Grandma Dorothy sat calmly beside me at a long table, Walter positioned on her other side. She looked physically small but completely unbreakable in spirit. "Thank you all for attending today," she began, her voice surprisingly powerful and clear. "I am present here today to directly address the widespread rumors and the baseless allegations surrounding my final will and my granddaughter Rachel." She proceeded to systematically lay out every fact, the detailed documentation of years of abuse, the stolen trust fund money, the 2 decades of emotional and financial manipulation. She presented concrete bank records, formal medical evaluations decisively proving her full mental competence, and corroborating testimony from various independent witnesses. The presentation was devastatingly methodical and completely irrefutable. "Some people have suggested that Rachel somehow manipulated me," Grandma Dorothy stated, her gaze sweeping across the whole room. "The factual truth is the complete reverse. My biological family systematically manipulated her. They took a severely grieving 5-year-old child and effectively utilized her as a convenient emotional punching bag for their own deep-seated inadequacies. They criminally stole from her, constantly belittled her, and intentionally made her feel totally worthless. Despite enduring all of that relentless abuse, Rachel successfully built a life and established a thriving business. She evolved into a kind, deeply compassionate, and extremely hardworking woman, everything that they clearly are not." Then, she physically gestured toward me. "Rachel would now like to say a few brief words herself." My mouth immediately went dry. Every single eye in the packed room was fixed directly upon me. I could sense the instant judgment, the raw curiosity, the deep skepticism. I carefully cleared my throat. I honestly do not know what additional words I can say that my grandmother has not already thoroughly expressed. I never wanted this relentless public attention. I never wanted the burden of being wealthy or famous or involved in complex legal battles. My voice stabilized as I continued speaking. I simply wanted a functional family unit that truly loved me. I yearned for parents who truly cared about my well-being. I wanted siblings who truly celebrated my professional successes instead of simply mocking them relentlessly. I merely wanted to feel that I truly belonged somewhere. I looked directly into the camera lenses. I am completely aware that some of you currently believe I am a gold digger, that I deliberately manipulated a dying woman solely for her money, but I was completely unaware of the existence of the inheritance until that specific night in the restaurant. I was totally unaware that my grandmother was seriously ill. I knew nothing at all about the stolen trust fund money. All I knew definitely was that, yet again, my family was publicly humiliating me and aggressively demanding that I pay the bill for the sheer privilege of being present. Tears welled up, but I forcibly pushed them back. My grandmother is granting me her significant fortune because she possesses an unwavering belief in the person I basically am, not because I ever once requested it from her. And I am fully committed to honoring that huge trust by actively being exactly the person she sees. Someone who successfully builds things, truly helps struggling people, and absolutely refuses to engage in cruelty simply because it is the easier option. The shouted questions immediately followed, coming fast and aggressively. Reporters screamed, cameras flashed blindingly. But Walter skillfully fielded the queries, and Grandma Dorothy sat reassuringly beside me, her hand finding mine discreetly beneath the table. Just as we were formally concluding the press event, Victoria forcefully burst through the main doors. Security personnel immediately moved to restrain her, but she was already loudly shouting hysterically, This is all a collection of blatant lies. She has successfully brainwashed every single one of you. Victoria's makeup was badly smeared. Her expensive designer dress was heavily wrinkled. She looked truly unhinged and emotionally unstable. I am the real victim in this situation. That adopted little brat has stolen my rightful inheritance. The cameras quickly swiveled their focus completely toward her, capturing every single moment of her explosive meltdown. Miss Victoria, one reporter called out urgently, what is your comment about the allegations that your parents criminally stole trust fund money specifically designated for Rachel's care? That money legally belonged to us. We earned every cent of it by raising her ungrateful self. You earned $750,000 simply for terribly treating a child like human garbage? Another reporter aggressively inquired. Victoria realized her terrible error far too late. The cameras had captured everything, her stunning admission, her uncontrolled rage, her complete and total lack of remorse. Get her out of this room immediately, Walter commanded the security detail. As Victoria was forcibly escorted out, still violently screaming threats, I watched the reporters frantically typing on their cellular devices. The whole public narrative had just dramatically shifted in my favor. Grandma Dorothy gently squeezed my hand firmly. Well, she whispered quietly, I truly do not think we could have possibly orchestrated that sequence of events any better. Even if we had strategically attempted to, despite everything I was enduring, I almost managed a small smile. Victoria had absolutely destroyed her own cause, and she had done it publicly on camera for the whole world to witness. The video footage capturing Victoria's volatile meltdown went totally viral within mere hours. By that evening, it had already reached over 10 million views. News outlets played the footage continuously on loop, carefully dissecting every single word spoken, every unhinged facial expression. Social media exploded with intense commentary. Did she seriously just openly admit they took money for raising an adopted kid? This whole family is deeply toxic. Rachel deserves every penny. Victoria just completely torpedoed her own legal case in under 60 seconds. Absolutely brilliant. That look on her face when she realized what she had confessed, priceless. The public opinion shifted dramatically overnight. What had previously been a sharply divided conversation instantly became a huge landslide of public support directed toward me, coupled with widespread condemnation aimed squarely at my family. Memes quickly spread. Commentary videos carefully analyzed the situation. Legal experts publicly weighed in, all universally agreeing that Victoria's stunning on-camera admission had basically torpedoed any faint chance they might have had of successfully contesting the will. I watched the whole development unfold from Grandma Dorothy's study, still attempting to process the implications. Walter sat across from me, looking clearly pleased. Their whole legal case has just absolutely collapsed, he stated. Victoria's candid admission that they earned the trust fund money specifically by raising you is, in essence, a direct confession to misappropriation of funds, which perfectly complements the existing detailed documentation we already possess. They possess no legitimate legal ground to stand upon. What subsequent actions will occur now? I inquired. Now? Their various lawyers will certainly attempt to initiate immediate damage control, but it is already far too late for that. The formal court hearing is scheduled in 3 days' time. I would be completely astonished if the presiding judge does not rule totally in our favor immediately and decisively. He paused briefly. There is also the significant criminal aspect of this matter. The district attorney's office has already reached out to us. They are actively considering formal fraud charges against both Patricia and Gregory, criminal charges. My adoptive parents faced the real prospect of imprisonment. Grandma Dorothy slowly entered the study, moving with difficulty with Thomas offering support for her arm. She had declined noticeably rapidly since the stressful press conference. The sheer effort had totally depleted her dwindling reserves, but her eyes remained intensely sharp. Do not appear so worried about their fate, she advised me. They freely made their specific choices. Now, they must inevitably face the consequences, but they are still officially my parents, I stated quietly, almost defensively. Or they were intended to be my parents. They were clearly never your parents, Grandma Dorothy declared firmly. True parents protect their children, truly love them, and consistently support them. What Patricia and Gregory executed was deliberate exploitation, pure and deeply simple. My phone vibrated again. Another text message. But this particular one immediately caused my blood to run cold. I know your current residence now. This is definitely not over. V. I instantly showed the threat to Walter, who immediately placed a call. I am immediately filing a formal restraining order today and significantly increasing the security measures here at the estate. She is exhibiting signs of extreme desperation, Grandma Dorothy observed sagely. Desperate people often undertake truly dangerous actions. She was tragically correct. Over the course of the next 2 days, Victoria's public behavior became increasingly erratic and disturbing. She brazenly showed up at my former apartment building, screaming obscenities at the residents. She posted lengthy, rambling, increasingly unhinged rants on social media platforms, each subsequent post more unstable than the last. She outrageously claimed that I had utilized witchcraft to successfully manipulate Grandma Dorothy, that I was a basic component of some vast, shadowy conspiracy, that she was the legitimate victim of calculated elder abuse. Each desperate post only further worsened her already catastrophic public standing. The public watched her engage in real-time self-destruction, and any lingering shred of public sympathy that might have existed for her instantly evaporated. Kenneth attempted a completely different approach. He appeared on a local television news program, carefully presenting himself as the highly reasonable middle ground. Look, I believe strongly that mistakes were certainly made by both involved sides, he stated earnestly while addressing the camera. Yes, perhaps we were not as totally welcoming toward Rachel as we naturally should have been, but to totally cut out the whole biological family over simple childhood disagreements, that seems deeply extreme. The skeptical interviewer was clearly unconvinced by his performance. Mr. Kenneth, are you fully aware that your parents personally received $750,000 explicitly intended for Rachel's specialized care, which they allegedly utilized to fund your private education and that of your sister? Kenneth's carefully constructed composure immediately cracked apart. That specific money was basically intended for the whole family unit. Rachel ultimately benefited from those resources too. She was forced to wear second-hand garments while your sister was dressed in designer clothing. She was forced to take out significant student loans to attend community college while you attended a prestigious private university on a fully funded basis. How exactly did she concretely benefit from those funds? Kenneth abruptly terminated the interview prematurely, but the devastating damage was already complete. The public saw directly through his shallow pretense. My father Gregory attempted yet another tactic, desperately appealing for public sympathy. He gave a highly tearful, emotionally manipulative interview about how he had sincerely loved me like a daughter, how this whole situation was deeply breaking his heart, how families should ultimately forgive each other's mistakes. We certainly made mistakes, Gregory stammered, his voice clearly cracking. What parent has never made a mistake? But to be completely cut off, to be maliciously accused of outright theft, it is completely destroying all of us. Patricia can barely force herself out of bed. Kenneth's marriage is actively suffering. Victoria is experiencing a complete mental breakdown. All because we simply were not perfect parents. The interviewer, the very same one who had previously dismantled Kenneth's narrative, exhibited no mercy whatsoever. Mr. Gregory, you are characterizing your specific actions merely as not being perfect. But professional investigators have carefully documented years of systemic emotional abuse, calculated financial exploitation, and the systematic exclusion of Rachel from virtually all key family activities. This behavior extends far beyond simple imperfection. That is not abuse. That is merely standard family dynamics. Every family unit experiences various issues. However, every family unit does not criminally steal $750,000 from a dependent child, the interviewer countered sharply. My father abruptly walked out too. But my mother's tactical approach proved to be the most deliberately calculated. Patricia hired a specialized PR firm and gave a carefully crafted interview to a sympathetic journalist. She wore a deliberately simple dress, utilized minimal makeup, and positioned herself carefully in soft, flattering lighting. She strategically wept at all the most appropriate moments. I sincerely loved Rachel from the exact moment we brought her home, Patricia claimed, delicately dabbing her eyes. Nourishment, utility costs. Raising a child demands significant expense. Perhaps we should have carefully documented every single expenditure. But we were operating as a family, not conducting a business transaction. She then looked directly into the camera lens. Rachel, if you happen to be watching this interview, please know this truth. I truly love you. I always have loved you. Can we please simply communicate privately, without unnecessary lawyers, without the intrusive media, just mother and daughter? I watched the whole interview alongside Grandma Dorothy and Walter. When it concluded, I felt physically sickened. She is certainly effective, Walter admitted honestly. This is the most sympathetic public appearance they have managed since this whole ordeal began. She is a pathological liar, I stated flatly and without emotion. She never truly loved me. This is merely yet another manipulation technique. I'm aware of that fact, Grandma Dorothy agreed. But some vulnerable people will definitely choose to believe her performance. The crucial question is, do you personally care about their belief? Did I truly care anymore? I pondered the question deeply. Just 1 week prior, I might have cared desperately about public perception. I would have fiercely wanted everyone to know the verifiable truth, to clearly see Patricia for the manipulative person she truly was, but now? No, I declared. I no longer care what random strangers think of me. The people whose opinions truly matter already know the complete truth, Grandma Dorothy smiled gently. Good girl. The actual court hearing finally arrived on a typical gray Seattle morning. The courthouse building was heavily surrounded by persistent media, vocal protesters holding signs both for and against me, and curious onlookers hoping to glimpse the unfolding drama. Walter had carefully arranged for us to gain entry through a discreet private entrance, but I could still clearly hear the persistent noise outside. Grandma Dorothy looked physically weak, confined to her wheelchair. We had finally persuaded her to utilize one, but her spinal posture remained completely straight. I held her hand firmly as we entered the austere courtroom. My family was already present inside. Patricia, Gregory, Kenneth, and Victoria sat stiffly at the defendant's legal table alongside their team of expensive lawyers. Patricia maintained the fragile, sympathetic outward appearance from her earlier interview. Gregory looked emotionally exhausted and totally defeated. Kenneth actively avoided meeting my gaze. But Victoria stared intensely at me with pure, complete hatred. The presiding judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Morrison, entered the room, and everyone instantly rose respectfully. This session is a formal hearing regarding the last will and testament of Dorothy Hayes, and the formal contest filed by Patricia Hayes and her family, Judge Morrison began. I have thoroughly reviewed all documentation submitted by both involved parties. Counsel, please present your opening statements. The family's primary lawyer spoke first, a slick, polished man named Robert, who aggressively argued that Grandma Dorothy had been subjected to undue influence, that her advanced illness had significantly impaired her judgment, and that the new will should be completely set aside in favor of the previous legally binding version. Then Walter calmly rose to speak. He did not engage in aggressive arguments or emotional pleading. He simply presented verified facts. Bank records clearly demonstrating the criminally stolen trust fund money. Formal medical evaluations from 3 separate, qualified doctors confirming Grandma Dorothy's clear mental competence. Corroborating testimony from various business associates affirming her consistent mental acuity. Detailed documentation outlining the abuse I had suffered, photos, audio recordings, witness statements, and finally Victoria's devastating viral video confession. Your Honor, Walter concluded absolutely. This is basically not a legal case concerning undue influence. This is a clear case concerning a woman exercising her right to leave her significant estate to the individual who truly deserves it, and a family consumed by rage because their designated victim has finally successfully escaped their control. Patricia's lawyer attempted to counter this narrative, but Judge Morrison instantly cut him off sharply. I have observed and read sufficient evidence, she stated firmly. The presented evidence is totally overwhelming. Miss Dorothy Hayes was certainly of sound mental capacity when she legally executed her new will. The documentation detailing the years of abuse is extensive and highly credible, and the explicit admission by Victoria Hayes that the family earned money specifically intended for Rachel's care basically serves to confirm the allegations of serious financial exploitation. My heart started vigorously pounding. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued without hesitation, the overly aggressive behavior exhibited by the contesting parties throughout these legal proceedings, including the numerous threats, harassment, and intentional public defamation, only further reinforces that Miss Dorothy's decision was completely correct. A family unit that truly loved Rachel would never have subjected her to this treatment, either before or after the significant will change. Victoria instantly sprang to her feet, unable to restrain herself. This is complete nonsense. You cannot simply sit down immediately, Judge Morrison commanded forcefully, or I will cite you for a contempt of court. Victoria reluctantly sat back down, but her raw fury was clearly palpable. I am absolutely ruling in favor of the will as it was recently executed, Judge Morrison declared solemnly. The contestation is formally dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I am hereby ordering Patricia and Gregory Hayes to pay full restitution for the unlawfully misappropriated trust funds. $750,000 plus accumulated interest calculated over 22 years, totaling an approximate sum of $2.3 million. They possess exactly 90 days to render payment in full. The courtroom immediately erupted into chaos. Patricia physically collapsed in her chair, loudly sobbing uncontrollably. Gregory looked as though he had instantly aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Kenneth buried his head deeply in his hands. Victoria started screaming vile obscenities until court bailiffs forcibly escorted her out of the room. I sat completely frozen, totally incapable of processing the fact that it was truly finished. We had won the legal battle completely, decisively, and permanently. Grandma Dorothy firmly squeezed my hand again. It is finally concluded, sweetheart. You are legally free. The media immediately swarmed us as we departed the courthouse, but Walter and Thomas quickly formed a protective barrier. I could clearly hear the shouted questions. How did I feel personally? What specific plans did I have for utilizing the huge money? Did I have a personal message for my family? But I remained silent, offering no response. I simply assisted Grandma Dorothy into the waiting car and allowed Thomas to expertly drive us away from the scene. Back at the vast estate, Grandma Dorothy was physically exhausted but deeply satisfied. I can now achieve death happily, she declared, and the words struck me like a tangible physical blow. Do not speak those words, I whispered urgently. Please stop. Oh, Rachel. She gently cupped my face using her thin hands. I harbor no fear of death. I successfully witnessed justice being served. I received the assurance that my fortune will go to someone who will use it to create good in this world. That is all I ever wanted. Tears streamed down my face. I don't want to lose you. You will never lose me, she said softly. I will always be with you. In every choice you make, in every life you help, in every moment you choose kindness over cruelty. That is how I will live on. She passed away on a Tuesday morning while I was holding her hand, the sun streaming brightly through the window glass. Her very last words were, "Thank you immensely for being my real family." I remained beside her body for a long time afterward, deeply weeping for the magnificent woman who had ultimately saved me, who had truly loved me, who had gifted me a viable future. The only grandmother I had ever really possessed. The funeral service was highly private, attended only by myself, Thomas, Walter, and a small circle of Grandma Dorothy's closest personal friends. My biological family was specifically not invited, although Patricia made an attempt to crash the service and was immediately turned away by security guards. In the weeks that followed, the complete transfer of all assets was successfully completed. I was officially the sole heir to a staggering $8 billion financial fortune. The incomprehensible number still remained far too abstract to grasp, but I was totally determined to carefully honor Grandma Dorothy's deep legacy. The very first action I took was establishing the Dorothy Hayes Foundation for Adopted Children. Not because it sounded philanthropically appealing or improved my public image, but because I possessed firsthand, intimate knowledge of how many children were tragically trapped in circumstances identical to mine. The foundation would provide crucial legal representation, required counseling services, emergency temporary housing, and important educational funding for adopted children actively suffering from ongoing abuse or exploitation. The second critical step I took was hiring an excellent management team to competently oversee Grandma Dorothy's sprawling corporate entities. I was not yet fully prepared to personally run billion-dollar corporations, but I was completely capable of learning the skills. I attended every scheduled meeting, relentlessly asked pertinent questions, and studied late into the night. Slowly, I began to truly understand the vast empire she had successfully constructed. My family's subsequent downfall was swift and brutally painful. Unable to pay the mandated $2.3 million in restitution, Patricia and Gregory were immediately forced to sell their luxurious house, all their luxury vehicles, and every other possession of significant value. They were compelled to relocate into a tiny apartment situated in a particularly rough neighborhood. This was deeply ironic considering satisfying outcome. Her widely viewed viral meltdown had completely destroyed every scrap of professional credibility she might have retained. Her husband immediately filed for divorce, taking their shared home and the majority of their marital assets. She had heavily invested her remaining capital into a restaurant venture that failed spectacularly and rapidly, leaving her deeply buried in debilitating debt. The private investigator she had previously hired to uncover damaging dirt on me was now actively suing her for significant unpaid fees. She made an attempt to author a sensational tell-all book, but various publishers rejected the manuscript after careful fact-checkers concluded it was full of outright falsehoods. She next attempted to launch a response. 6 months following Grandma Dorothy's inevitable death, I stood inside the Foundation's brand-new, purpose-built headquarters, a beautiful architectural structure in downtown Seattle completely dedicated to offering help to children exactly like I had been. The walls were adorned with photographs of children we had already successfully assisted, accompanied by stories detailing their escape and new beginnings. Thomas stood quietly beside me, having enthusiastically accepted a position as the Foundation's devoted operations director. "Miss Dorothy would certainly be extremely proud of your accomplishments," he remarked warmly. "I sincerely hope that is the case," I replied. My phone briefly buzzed. Another message. "But I will offer you a specific deal. I will donate the exact monetary amount they criminally stole from me, $750,000, to a charitable fund dedicated to helping adopted children to escape abusive families, and I will do so in their specific names. That is the only legacy they will ever possess." I hit the send button and immediately blocked his number permanently. 1 year later, I was prominently featured in a major business magazine, recognized not as the adopted girl who unexpectedly inherited billions, but as a successful CEO competently running multiple successful companies and overseeing a rapidly expanding foundation that had already provided critical assistance to over 500 children. The detailed article focused exclusively on my professional work, my personal vision, and my verifiable accomplishments. There was a small, almost negligible mention of my past family drama, but it was absolutely relegated to the past now. The whole public narrative had permanently shifted. I was no longer viewed as the helpless victim. I was not the ridiculed gold digger or the cunning manipulator. I was simply Rachel, a woman who had successfully survived deep adversity, thrived despite it, and consciously chosen to help other individuals achieve the very same outcome. I had received information through mutual acquaintances that Victoria was currently employed in telemarketing, Grace. Victoria's repeated attempts to rebuild her shattered life consistently failed, each subsequent venture collapsing immediately under the insurmountable weight of her severely tarnished reputation and her naturally poor decision-making. Patricia and Gregory spent their remaining years living in widespread poverty and debilitating isolation, their biological children too consumed by their own escalating struggles to offer meaningful assistance. Kenneth's overwhelming pride never permitted him to accept available jobs he arrogantly deemed beneath his social status, keeping him perpetually teetering on the dangerous edge of complete financial ruin. They had originally constructed their whole lives upon a naturally flawed foundation of rampant entitlement and deliberate cruelty. And when that weak foundation crumbled, they had nothing left to support them. I felt no joy in their suffering, but I felt no guilt either. They had sown their seeds and now they were harvesting the results. As for me, I continued building something truly beautiful. That, purely and simply, was the natural progression of justice taking its final course.